Hello, everyone. I'm First Lady Kathy Evers. This past year has been a very challenging one, and numbers are showing that anxiety and stress are on the rise among kids and teens. Today, I am joined by Dr. Marcia Slattery, a professor of psychiatry and pediatrics at the University of Wisconsin and director of the University of Wisconsin Anxiety Disorders Program. She specializes in the treatment of anxiety and stress in adolescents and children and has some great advice for all of us on how to help kids navigate the changes brought on by COVID-19. Hello, Dr. Slattery. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure and privilege to be here with you today. Thank you.
We're very happy to have you here. So tell us, what do you see the causes for additional anxiety and stress among kids this year? And what can we as adults do to help?
Well, I'd like to start out by reviewing what helps kids feel not so anxious. That's really what I like to focus on to bring us back. And that's predictability, what I call the 3 Ps: predictability, purpose, and people. And the big stressor obviously was COVID. When COVID hit, predictability, purpose, and people basically went out the window. It was very acute, it was very sudden, and everything became very disoriented. So the acute stage, the stress related to that was very much trying to adapt and assimilate to what just happened. We weren't going to school, we weren't going to work, everything was changed, we were told not to be with people. So everything we were used to was suddenly gone. The abruptness caused a lot of stress and disorientation. But here we are now many months into it. And so the kind of stress that we're experiencing now is very different. And it's much more of a chronic stress. What I describe as kind of a feeling the burn, if you will. Kids are tired of virtual school. They want to be with their friends. They want to be in their activities. Parents want to be with their friends in usual activities, etc. And it's causing a lot of stress at home because we can't do the usual things that we want. It's also stressful at home. Parents, many of them still working at home, many of them financial difficulties and stressors, as we know, and just not being able to be with people, our extended family and our friends, etc. When we're wired to be with people during times of anxiety and stress. And now during this time when this hits, we can't. So COVID has really been the big stressor in really disrupting all of these different major domains of life for us. And so when I think about what do we do for kids, or how can we think about it, how can parents think about it, I go back to my 3 Ps: predictability, purpose, and people. So predictability, we can build in a lot of predictability in our homes. And in fact, it's very important that we do. So I advise parents, make a routine, a very basic schedule that you have every day when you have school and study time, keeping sleep steady and predictable, and keeping meal time and interacting with friends and activity time, trying to have a variety besides just screens, and making a very simple routine every day, writing it out and posting it somewhere and putting it like on the front of the refrigerator or something, so people can remind ourselves, this is what we have for the day. Our brain kind of says, this is our roadmap for the day. So it's very important to keep the variety there and to keep the predictability. What's also important, though, is when we can't go out and do the usual things that we want, it's important for parents to remember to build in fun things that are also predictable for their kids. So instead of going to soccer, for example, on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, for example, it may be that we have family night, like board game night or movie night, or things that are scheduled just like they would for activities outside of home, and things that are enjoyable. Not, well, if we get time, we'll do these things. These are things that we really need to build in and put on the schedule. So it's very important for parents to remember to build those in for things for kids to look forward to. Now, the second P is purpose or focus. We all need a focus and need a purpose in our day. For example, when we go off to work, we know what our job is and what we need to do. For kids, that's school. So school is an important part in what they do in school. But it might also be for younger kids, things that they're coloring, projects that they're doing, etc. And a really important part of having a purpose and for kids of what they need in their activities is to give them feedback on it. In other words, not to put them on the other side of the room and say, I want you to go over here and work on something for 2 hours, but instead say, I want you to work on the following things. Here are the 3 things I want you to do while I'm checking in on you. And I'm going to see where you're at the end of this period of time. Kids need that feedback. We don't recognize what teachers give, how they validate kids. They did a good job. They're there to help them when it's things they don't understand, for example. And so it's very important that we give kids feedback about what they're doing. So it's not that they're doing it for no reason, but really that we care and we're looking and we're paying attention to it. So giving them a sense of purpose in what they're doing is important too. And finally, the third P, people. Kids really need to have the interactions with other individuals, particularly peers. We're at a time when we can't be with them, so we really need to maximize what are the virtual ways that we can do that with video chats and texting and phone calls, etc., in person when it obviously is safe. But trying to find fun activities too. For example, I just heard last week of a team, they did baking together while they were on FaceTime together, which was fun for them to do, or other activities like that, so they feel connected, and that's very important for kids. For parents, it's very important to also feel like they're a consistent presence in the life of their kids. And one thing that I often recommend to parents is to find a time during the day or in the evening when you connect with your kid every day. And a favorite time that I like to recommend to parents, particularly younger kids, but for all ages for that matter, is when your kid's getting ready for bed and they're getting into bed and about to go to sleep, pull up a chair and sit there for 5 minutes and just talk with them about whatever they want to talk about. There's no agenda. They could talk about what happened that day. They could talk about a trip that's coming up. But what you'll also find is that they will also likely talk about problems and concerns that they have. And that's a great way for you to understand what your kid is thinking about and what they're feeling. So connect with your kid, find that time to connect. The same thing, some kids are really struggling with virtual school. And I recommend that they reach out to the teacher and definitely see, recognizing that teachers have a large volume too. But for some of these kids, just having a check-in for 5 minutes with the teacher makes a world of difference because they feel they've connected. They've made that connection with their teacher, and now they're much more invested and they feel like the teacher really cares and is noticing them. So finding ways to make that personal connection is really critical.
Gosh, these are all great ideas that parents can do at home. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
The 3 Ps are great. How can parents know if their kids are feeling more anxious or stressed or depressed?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, despite we can do all the best things and plan all the best things, we're still going to get stressed. We're still going to get anxious. And there are going to be days when we're more irritable and cranky or down. And so it's important to talk about that too, and to normalize it, that there are going to be times when we're more stressed or things are not going right or we're frustrated with the whole situation. So making that a normal part of discussions, like today I'm feeling this way, or I'm a little stressed, I'm going to take a time out, or I'm not going to do that today, is important. And a really good way of doing that, and that's very concrete, is the feelings thermometer that we developed, where you can actually refer to that, as you've well pointed out, to say, well, here's where I am, here's the color that I'm feeling right now. That's a good way to convey to everyone in the family where that person, the other family member, is at. And also for that member of the family to say, all right, I'm feeling a little bit more agitated, or a little more irritable, or a little bit more stressed. Here are things I know I can do. It's a very concrete, pragmatic tool to use that, again, is very visual. Those of you that have magnets, having it on your refrigerator or printing off the feelings thermometer, a great place to put it wherever you can find that we're walking around the home, and post it for people to see and remind themselves that, yeah, it's pretty normal for me to have a range of emotions, and here's how I can manage it. And to have a plan, like if I'm feeling really anxious, or if I'm feeling really irritable, or I'm angry, here's what I need to do. Have a plan in mind so that we can manage that and regulate it, rather than having that build up and cause other secondary problems.
It sounds like all of this would fit for parents too, right?
Absolutely. Parents need the 3 Ps as much as the kids. They need predictability and routine. They need the purpose and their focus, whether that's their employment and their job, or whatever their routine and what their goals are for that day. And they need to stay connected with individuals as well. And an important point also in this regard, when parents are feeling stressed, it's important that they're not conveying that a lot to their children. They're not hiding it, but we shouldn't be using our kids to work out our own adult problems. So it's very important that parents seek out other adults to talk to and to problem solve, etc. Because one of the most common mistakes that parents make is to think, I'm really stressed, but my kid doesn't really pick up on that, or they don't know what I'm going through. I assure you they do. And in fact, they will magnify it. So when parents are stressed and anxious, kids will feel it tenfold. So monitor your own stress and anxiety and irritability and all the range of emotions that happens during times of stress. Have a plan and be sure that you're also paying attention to your own 3 Ps. That's my recommendations for the parents as well.
So we've talked about some proactive things adults can do, but what should we do if we see a child really struggling or on overload?
You know, like I said, all of us are going to have days where we have ups and downs. That's part of being human, right? If it's perpetual, though, or more pervasive, I should say, if it's more days than not and is really causing trouble at home, and I would say this for parents and for kids, a really good starting point is to go to your primary care provider and talk about it. Your primary care provider knows you well, for the most part, right? Knows all the resources, understands all of this range of emotions and behaviors and stressors that are going on, and they can be a really good starting point. They oftentimes can be very good referral sources for suggestions of other places to go. And of course, we have other resources as well, whether they're specialty mental health resources or other community resources or suicide hotlines, et cetera, if there are concerns in that regard. So there's a wealth of resources out there. And I think the important thing is finding where to go so that we can disseminate these and find that individual, such as your primary care provider, to help you navigate that about what is needed and how we can best help.
Good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Dr. Slattery. We are really lucky that you came back to Wisconsin and are working here too. And we have such great resources on children's mental health right here in Wisconsin. And I thank you for sharing your expertise with us today and giving us your time too. Stay well, Wisconsin.
Thank you very much.
You can view or print the feelings thermometer and view our guide for how to access children's mental health services at www.children.wi.gov.